mandatory vaccination. I think we're seeing these measles outbreaks now. I think it could be very dangerous if we don't. On the climate issue, that we've got to get this right, and we've got to get it right now. The clock is ticking. There's no question, and we see it every day. We have got to align environmental incentives with financial incentives. We can't do this as a centralized government program. That's just not going to work, I don't think. I think the government has a responsibility. We need to invest in some of these newer technologies. We've got to do the research. We've got to innovate. We've got to get early stage capital to people. The way out, I believe, obviously is through regulating and making sure that carbon is not getting leaked out into the atmosphere. But we actually have to reverse climate change. We can't say, oh, we're going to go carbon neutral. We've got to reverse it. And so the electric vehicles, the solar, the wind, there needs to be a big agricultural component. I think we need to pay farmers to sequester carbon. I think it's a great way for us to help farmers. Right now, they haven't made a profit in 5 years in rural America. This is a great way to help them make money. And you tie into that the wind industry, where they can actually have windmills and potentially sell power back to the grid. They can make money on that. And then we can create incentives for them also to move to a more regional and sustainable agriculture where they can make money. We've got to move to regenerative agriculture over time, no-till farming, using cover crops, really having a national conversation about the soil. I think the soil health is where we should all focus on, because that's the biggest problem that we have, and that really can cross the aisle, because you have a lot of conservative farmers in the country that are as concerned about the soil as liberal farmers, you know, and because it's literally the soil. Talk about common ground, right? I just thought of that. Write that down. I got to use that again. Man, that was good. I'm going to be in the common ground. Gotta have fun, right? Sorry. And I think that's the soil piece is going to be critically important. We have got to. This is where having a national conversation around healthcare, and I'm sure someone's going to ask the healthcare question, but it is a conversation that needs to be about health, and it's got to be a conversation about food, and it's got to be a conversation about agriculture, because what we're doing today with industrial agriculture is devastating our planet. We see algae blooms in the Great Lakes where I'm from. We see algae blooms in the lakes. I was down in Florida. There's all kinds of water issues and algae issues in Lake Okeechobee in Florida. Iowa, I'm learning, has a lot of issues around water. I had a friend of mine tell me the other day, he's researching a book that we actually kill off, check this out, 220,000 metric tons of fish in the Gulf of Mexico because of the runoff in the dead zone at the mouth of the Mississippi. 220,000 metric tons of fish. And we are devastating our planet, and there are those dead zones all around the world. So it's not just in the Gulf of Mexico. We've got to have a national conversation about this. And again, the President of the United States, how do we sit down with the farmers and say, look, Donald Trump has screwed you. I don't know how much clearer I can be. He has devastated you. These tariffs have devastated you. He has no rural agenda for you other than to run around and say I'm a blue collar billionaire or whatever he says. He has hurt them. He has no agenda for them. I think it's a perfect opportunity for Democrats to actually go to rural America, try that for a change. We haven't done that for a few years. We just lost a huge election in Ohio. We were losing our rural counties 70-30. Same thing I think happened in Iowa with your last statewide race. Let's go. I mean, let's go into rural America and say, we got an agenda for you. Let's talk about the Roosevelt FDR coalition, where we had immigrants, communities of color, white working class, and rural Americans that were all together. I just want to say this. I went to Storm Lake a couple weeks back, and they had the big conference there. And I was stunned at the similarities of challenges in rural America and the challenges in places like Youngstown, Ohio. I mean, the first 4 or 5, it was our downtowns are empty. Right? We need to get some stimulus and some growth into our downtowns. We have a meth problem. In Ohio, it's opiates, heroin. We're losing manufacturing. I told you about GM. We're losing either hospitals or services within the hospital. And we lost a hospital in Youngstown, and it was the maternity ward that was in there. And someone was telling me that whatever the county was that they were from, because people were coming from all over, that there'll never be another baby born in this county again because they closed the maternity ward. So, farmers haven't made a living or a profit in 5 years. Like, all of these issues, they're the same issues in the small, mid-sized towns. They're the same issues for most Americans and most communities. So what I think I offer, coming from where I come from, is to go to rural America and say, rural America, you're not going to break the monopoly in agriculture just with you. Look what's happening. You elected your guy, and this ain't happening. Manufacturing world, you're not going to overturn corporate greed in the United States, just you alone. But if we have a candidate, which I am, that can bring these two big coalitions together, we're not going to win rural America. I'm not naive. But if we can pull some votes from rural America and run strong in some of these traditional Rust Belt areas, industrial Midwest areas, you now have a coalition that can take on the concentration of wealth in the United States, just like Roosevelt did, just like Teddy Roosevelt did, because you've got a coalition of voters and you're going to help everybody. And if you are able to bust the monopolies and bust up the concentration of wealth, then you're going to have this coalition that we can actually move forward on. And it's going to start with Democrats going to rural America and really being concerned about renovating the theater in downtown and building out the bike walk and the river walk and the bike trail and helping with parks and getting the arts downtown, into the downtown area, making that a central piece of our agenda, as well as what I talked about with helping the farmers. We can do this. This is what I'm saying. This is why I'm running. We can do this. The presidency has so much executive power. I mean, not as much as the mayor has, but it has a lot of executive power. And we can do this if we have a president that gets up every day and says, how can we do this? How can we get this done? I'm going to charge the Secretary of Commerce. I'm going to charge the Secretary of Agriculture. We're going to drive this agenda. And it's going to be on behalf of the people who have been left behind. This is doable. And we're in this scarcity mentality, the survivor's mentality. We got to break it. We got to come together and let's take this country back and push an agenda that takes care of people and reinvest back in the United States.